Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, May the 12th at 6:01, and I'm going to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. We have regrets from Councillor Yanish, and Councillor Larry Pench is going to be a few minutes late. She may Zoom in the meantime, but she'll be here shortly. Just a couple things. Approval of the agenda. It was circulated. I do have one deletion, council, if you will allow it, is 9 unfinished business, councillor nominations and appointment for the coordinated regional homeless engagement model. It's a council decision, so I'd like to move that straight to council in 2 weeks' time, if that is good with everybody. Okie doke. And I do believe we have 2 in-camera matters that we would like to add to in-camera under 14. Is that okay with everybody? CAO can speak on the
One would
nature of
be
it.
land related, to which is an ongoing discussion council we've had about a property. And then the second one would be labor related, again, ongoing discussions that I've had with you at the previous council meeting. So look to have those added if we could.
Okay, so council, as we know, when we make an addition or a deletion, we need to have a vote on that. So if we could have a vote on that, we'll just do it by show of hands. So all those in favor with the 2 additions and the 1 deletion? Okay, great. Motion approved. That's great. Was there anything else on the agenda before I move on? No. Any declarations of conflict of interest on anything this evening? Seeing no lights, I'll take that as a no. Okay, announcements. West Hants Regional Municipality is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is governed by the treaties of peace and friendship signed in 1726. West Hants Regional Municipality recognizes we are all treaty people and have responsibilities to this land and each other. West Hants Regional Municipality also recognizes African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose history, legacies, and contributions have enriched that part of Mi'kma'ki known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years. And we do have one presentation this evening, council, and as chair, I'm committed to ensuring this meeting and its participants conduct themselves in a respectful and professional manner as outlined in the municipality's municipal code of conduct. Meeting presenters, staff, and the public are expected to conduct themselves in an equally respectful manner at all times the meeting is being conducted. I'll thank you all in advance for your commitment to these meeting principles. I will open it up now if council has any other announcements that you would like to make. Wow, seeing no lights, we're a quiet bunch, so we'll keep moving on. Okay, 6, approval of previous meeting minutes. We have A, 2026-03-26, Special Committee of the Whole Budget Minutes. B, 2026-04-08, Special Committee of the Whole Budget Minutes. And C, 2026-04-14, Committee of the Whole Minutes. So unless there's anything anyone wants to discuss or make changes of, we'll approve those as they were circulated in the package. Perfect. Seeing none, we'll move right along. So 7, we're going to go to new business. We've moved this up on the agenda. So it is tender award, the Falmouth Causeway Trail Replacement Recommendation Report, and project engineer Boutier is here to present to us.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I have
Boater. I did say boater, didn't I?
Did you say
close enough.
I think I said boater.
I was like 2 seconds behind. So manage your balance.
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah.
So tonight we have a contract award to discuss, and it's for the Falmouth Causeway Trail replacement. The current capital budget includes a project for replacement of sections of the Falmouth Causeway Trail. And I'm sure that many of you are users of this trail, and certain sections are in very poor condition with asphalt broken up and heaved. So this poses a safety hazard for trail users. The new trail will be 1.8 meters wide to meet updated accessibility standards, and it will be constructed out of concrete for increased durability and a longer lifespan. So on one end, the project will start close to the playground behind the Irving, also close to the boat launch. And then on the other side, it will go kind of around the corner to where the train tracks are, where the trails parallel to the tracks. These pictures show the existing condition. I could have had a lot more pictures, but it's definitely a safety hazard. There's large chunks of asphalt that are either heaved or missing, and I see some nodding heads, so we know what the current state is. We received 6 tenders on April 30th, and the chart on the screen shows the different bidders. Humphreys Landscape and Construction Limited is the low bidder for this project. Their submission was fully compliant with the tender requirements. And I did a little bit of research because they haven't bid on any projects before, but they do have significant experience with similar projects in HRM, especially the small to medium size of project, which this would be. And they are therefore being recommended to council for award of the project. In terms of the financial impact, this chart shows the tender price of $148,000. The contingency is being recommended at 30%. And the reason for that is that there are recommendations from the Accessibility Committee. So within the contingency, normally it's around 15%, but we're proposing a higher amount so that we can add those recommendations into the project. And so walking through the chart, it shows that it's under budget and it's long-term borrowing as the funding source for this project. So in terms of accessibility, there were 3 recommendations that came from the Accessibility Committee. One of them is for the gazebo or bandstand. And you can see in the picture on the left that there's a lip, and also the surfacing isn't really accessible. So we could replace that with concrete as well and make it flush so that it's easily accessible. There's also 2 red chairs that are close to the gazebo. And another recommendation from the committee was to add a little section of sidewalk and like a pad close to those chairs. And then the third one is where the musical instruments are, close to the canoe club. Those are also off of the existing sidewalk. And so it wouldn't be too difficult to add some concrete panels and make that accessible as well. So the main recommendation comes in 2 parts. The first one is for the main contract, $148,248. And then the second one is for the contingency amount. And that's where the 30% comes in. And we included language where that contingency would include accessibility improvements along the Windsor waterfront that have been identified by the Accessibility Committee. Before we stop there, though, I wanted to talk about some alternatives. Just trying to catch up here. So since the project is significantly under budget, council may choose to complete additional sections of sidewalk and trail replacement. And 2 additional sections that are suggested as possibilities are first this one, the waterfront trail to the gazebo. So that would be approximately 140 meters. and that would come at a cost of $48,720 plus tax. So it would be the same unit rate as the main contract. And I did confirm that the contractor would be willing to do more work at the same unit rate. The second section would be the waterfront trail from the pumping station to Water Street. And that's kind of behind the building that houses H&R Block and the Windsor Dental Center. So currently there's a trail with stairs that meet the crosswalk, but then there's also kind of a gentle slope, but it's surfaced with crusher screenings. And so we could make that a lot more accessible by making that concrete as well. And just as a note, Kathy mentioned that this section on the screen is actually included in the capital budget for next year. And for year two, it was estimated at $100,000. And using the unit rates that we have in front of us now, that section would be $53,940 plus tax. So the alternative recommendation, the first one is still the same for the main contract. And then the second one would be to approve the award of an additional 295 meters of trail replacement along the Windsor waterfront. And then for this alternative, it really maximizes the available budget. And so the third recommendation would be for the contingency. And again, that would also include the accessibility improvements that have been identified.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, counselors, is there any questions? Mayor Zabian?
Yeah, just one question at this point from you to Manager Bowder. Timeline on this work, approximate how long, when would it start, etc.
Yes, so through the chair, the main contract has a deadline of the end of July. So if council chooses to do the additional sections, I would expect an additional month perhaps, but certainly it would be completed this summer.
So pretty much it'd be out of commission till the end of July anyways.
Yeah, they would do the work in sections. So I would guess that they would still start with the main contract.
Perfect.
Any other questions? Counselor Ivy?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to Manager Bowder. So I really appreciate that we got the components in there for the accessibility piece of it. Those came in after the tender was issued, I take it. Is that correct?
Yes, so through the chair, we had those discussions after the tender closed, and we knew that it was significantly under budget, and we saw that as an opportunity.
Absolutely. So do we have it built in as part of process now to try and, I guess, scope those in at the front end? Would that not be the better way? Or, I mean, it looks here it worked out really well, under budget, able to fit it in and get it done, and that's a really good thing. But I guess going forward, do we have anything in place to ensure we cover that at a front end piece?
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. And certainly I was not aware of these three recommendations coming from the accessibility committee, but as a management team, we could definitely integrate that into the thought process.
Yeah, just thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions? Counselor Smith?
Thank you, Chair, to Manager or Engineer Boder. Yeah, I went to the accessibility committee meeting, so I'm glad those were captured, those deficiencies. My question is, with the last leg of it that goes by the bandstand, would it be possible that we specify that there's no construction during the Avon River days, just so that area is free?
Yes, through the chair, that would definitely be recommended from our side as well. And we would coordinate with the contractor to ensure that would not interfere.
If there are, okay, go ahead.
I'll make the motions.
Oh, I still have questions.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. So I'm happy to see this because I am a walker of it, but I have a few questions. So we're going to use concrete, and the section that was done last year was paved. It's pretty thick. It's very nice. So that we'll meet up to that and flow through, which I'm happy to see. But I do have a couple questions when we get down towards the roundabout. And I don't want to open another can of worms, so I will let you go there. So that part that we're going to look at putting concrete, I totally understand and support that. However, there are a lot of people that don't walk that way. They come along the pavement, like the almost the driveway, if you know what I mean. That's very bad. And I don't want, and I, that's a bigger conversation later, but that's pretty heaved with ruts as well. So there are a lot of people that walk that way and not. So then we're going to go, and when we get down to the back part, we're going to do that one section. Now that there's a lot of people that take the stairs and go down, and I understand this will be for accessibility. So I totally support that one as well. So if we're using up all the budget, we're going to lose that, not have that section done in the back that goes to the stairs. Is that how I understand that? That's not scope of this program.
Yes, that one
This
would
one.
remain as the crusher screenings.
Okay. My next question is, and I don't think we do. Last year, I think there was a few times that the roadway where I was saying is not plowed. Like we don't clear that in the winter for folks to use this. So if we're going to put a walkway, concrete walkway there now, will we be snow clearing it in the winter?
I think maybe that would be a question for Kathy.
Because it's not now. So we're putting a trail in and we're going to concrete it.
You're referring to the Windsor side?
Yes.
Yeah, so the intent, I don't think would be to complete snow removal down along that pathway for the winter months, because folks can walk the sidewalk, which is cleared,
Yes.
and the complete loop would be cleared.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the same for the section that where the stairs are, that's not going to be cleared as
Correct.
well. We'll just direct them right to the sidewalk.
To the
down
sidewalk
the
as they
street.
normally would
Okay.
now,
I
correct?
just wanted to clarify if we were gonna, if we do this, if we're gonna plow it, because I know
Yeah.
we do the other way around.
Correct,
The
but
bound
folks
side.
do have the ability to walk on the sidewalk.
100%.
Yeah, in a completely paved loop.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to double check on that one. So that's all I had. Thank you.
So no increased operational costs.
That's what I was wondering, if we were going to start to clear that as well, if we put that in, so, or leave it as is. Okay. So Counselor Ivy?
Yeah, just to follow up through you, Deputy Mayor, to Manager Boder, in your response to the crusher dust. And I'm not sure that I was clear where you were referring to at the time, but your response was that the crusher dust would remain in response to the Deputy Mayor. Can you just make me clear on that? I was really pleased to hear that you were going to cement and not crusher dust, what I thought I heard you say.
Yep.
At that gradual slope. Is that correct?
So the gradual slope will be concrete. There's just one little portion of the trail that goes to the stairs that would remain as crusher dust.
Got it. Thank you. Thank
I'm going to throw salt on this a little bit, but that could be looked at another time. And if our contingency, where we have such a higher contingency, if that could be done at the same time, is it something that's worth exploring while we have them here? We have the funding. Sometimes it's cheaper to have them do it all at once when they're here. It's not that big of a section, but a lot of people I know do use the stairs and they don't go down that crusher, that steep embankment. They do use the stairs for whatever reason. Just a thought. If there was, we have a 30% contingency, and I know it's just for the areas where the chairs are and the two instruments behind Tim Hortons. So
Yes, so I estimated that out of the contingency, 25,000 would be for the accessibility components.
okay.
And then that would leave somewhere around, I think, 7 or 9% for the main contract. And I suppose that if there's no unexpected extras, there would still be some money available. For the long term, I would question, or it would be an interesting question whether the duplication from the stairs would even need to be there if there's an accessible connection.
Bigger than me for the question on that,
Yeah.
why the stairs were there. I do know there are a couple folks that I've seen walk there that may have had like a knee surgery or something, because they do it at the sports complex and they like to get that bend of the knee, that do use that for that reason. So, but anyway, food for thought for another time. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation. There is a few motions there. Mayor Zabian.
Yep, I'll make the first one there. Committee of the Whole recommends that council approve the award of tender WHRMPW 26-03 Falmouth Causeway Trail Replacement to Humphreys Landscape and Construction 1996 Limited for the tendered price of $148,248 before applicable taxes.
Motion made by Mayor Zabian. Is there a seconded by Councillor Paul Morton? We'll put that to a vote. Flickers. Is, before I say that, is Councillor Pinch online? No, okay. Just wanted to make sure if she was. Motion passed. Mayor Zabian, did you want to make the?
Yep, if we can just put that back up on the screen there, Clerk Snare. Council approved the award of an additional 295 meters of trail replacement along the Windsor waterfront to Humphreys Landscape Construction 1996 Limited for $102,660 before applicable taxes.
Seconded by Councillor Paul Morton. We'll put that to a vote. Motion passed. There was a third motion there. I'm not.
Council approve a construction contingency amount of $37,942.38 for applicable taxes, including accessibility improvements along the Windsor waterfront that have been identified by the Accessibility Committee.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Paul Morton. We'll put that one to a vote. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we'll move along. We do have a presentation this evening, the Windsor Township Business Association quarterly update, and I would like to invite the folks up, and you guys know the drill. You can, Karen, if you're coming up, introduce yourselves and you're good to go.
Hello, thank you, everyone. It's good to see you all again. Tonight we're just going to be, I'm going to be doing a very quick recap of the end of our year, and Ezra is going to go into some updating, an update on some new stats we have on who is coming to Windsor. So it's hard to believe the year is over. We're already a month into our new year. The holiday decorating contest in November was super successful this year. We had 1,000 public votes, so it was 1,000 unique emails. So Davison Accounting, Lisa's, I could only fit one of her pictures in there. Her whole yard was astounding. And then Blossoms and Cuticles were the winners this year. And no matter how you did it, public versus judging, it was the same top four. So Davison's is going for trifecta this year. They're very competitive. So if you have any ideas on what you'd like to see as a theme, it's going to be Starry Night something. So we welcome all suggestions. So winter thing. So we had our 3rd annual winter thing. We actually had great weather this year. Not as good as the first year, but some amazing weather. The Piper has been a huge success. We actually had people walk with us this year. It wasn't just some random people walking with a Piper, which is great. Town Crier surprisingly showed up as a surprise, which is great. We had 10 musical acts. We had yoga. We had drumming circle. I'm already planning next year's. I think we're going to actually have some ghost stories around town. I've been talking with Jerome, the tour guide. So some great sponsors. So I want to thank the municipality. Vanessa is an amazing resource and keeps us all going. We had the Rotary, the CBDC, Melissa Sheehy, Cody. We also had the Lions, the Valley Wren, Martok, Kindling, and Lindsay Wood Company. So it takes a lot to keep it going, but we're looking into the 4th year and making it even bigger. And I hope everyone who got to see Biscuit the Lamb. So if you want a successful event, have a baby animal. That is the success plan. So we've been having a lot of growth. I was kind of looking at how to demonstrate this growth, but so from June 2024 to April, we've been gathering about 33 followers a month, which is pretty good. A little less on Instagram. Instagram's a tougher beast. It always goes up around event time and contests, and then I know I'm guilty of it. Then I stop following once the contest is over, but it's staying as a net positive, and that will actually relate to what Ezra will speak to. The facade, we used all our facade money except for about $500 this year. So we had 8 projects. We'll be adding to that budget this year. We already have 1 submission, Avon Recycling. So brother and sister who bought that company. So it'll be very exciting to help them out. Let me just have some photos of the completed projects. So Blossom, like the difference from what that looked like to what it looks like now is quite astounding. And the ramp on Reader's Haven is beautiful. There was one part on the Napa building that didn't get done, that little light brown part at the top. They did have some challenges with weather and a car going through the window and random stuff like that. So, everyone was okay. No one had chassis cards was hurt. So that's the important thing. So looking forward to our next fiscal year. The first thing is the AGM, which you are all invited to. It is at the Spitfire on May 25th, 5:30 to 7:30. It will be in the newsletter. There'll be a special invite as well. So come have some appetizers. You'll hear a bit more about what we're planning, what we're doing. And just, meeting the business people who are downtown and, what's making our community thrive. We're hiring 2 summer students this year, pretty exciting, to work on some different things. In June, you guys are kind of the first to know about this event because it hasn't been public yet. We've partnered with Pride for a tea party at Clifton. We ran it 2 years ago. It was quite fun. So kind of a partnership between all 3 of us. And in July, we'll have our music socials. So depending on how that gazebo goes, we may be somewhere else, but I am very excited to hear about that ramp at the gazebo because that has always been something that we hear about. We'll be participating in Avon River Days. We're the Grand Parade sponsor again. So we're working on our float. I've already secured Janice Forand out of retirement to be on our float because she's pretty fabulous. September will be at Garlic Fest, bigger and better. We have a couple of community socials planned. One will probably involve ice cream. The other will probably involve beer. The locations aren't confirmed yet, but 99% confirmed. We'll celebrate Small Business Week, and then it will be Christmas time. So that's where we need your ideas for the contest. I would love to get a float in the Santa Parade this year, just to really amp it up. And then this will be the second year as well for Maker's Parade of Woodland Animals. So that would be exciting. We'll be participating in that. And then it'll be winter thing again. So we're already in March and it's only May, but yeah. So in addition to all that, I'm still doing my one-on-ones. I am available to meet with anyone, including yourselves, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. any day of the week. There has to be coffee if it's early in the morning. I'm doing about 2 newsletters a month, and you can usually find me at the Avon Chamber events, as I am a board member there as well. Anything that Nova Scotia Works is doing or Edge is doing, Valley Ren or HABA or CBDC is doing, just to really, we like to all work together and support each other. So I wanted to get that all in very quickly so Ezra could talk about this stuff longer.
Thank you.
If you could just pull the mic
Yeah,
over, just so folks at home can hear you, that's great.
So I'm just going to talk about the second Environics report that we commissioned this year and received a couple of weeks ago. We did the previous report to this a year ago, and I spoke to this when we were here last spring. Environics uses cell phone data to basically track visitors to a specified region. And for these reports, we use what's called a geofence, which is an area defined by borders that basically mirror the borders of our bid area. So they go from the lake up Cedar Street to Wiley to King Street, sort of like to O'Brien, to Wentworth, to the Fort Edward Mall, and back to the lake, which is our district. And Environics tracks unique visitors to that geofenced area in a 12-month period. So this report that we commissioned this spring is for the it would be April 1st, 2024 until March 31st, 2025. And there's some really interesting information. I think it's also just important to note that a unique visitor is not a resident, and it's not someone who works within that bid area. So these are people that come into the bid area specifically to visit. And they filter out the people that live in that area, and they filter out the people that are working in that area. So a worker would show up regularly every day from work hours-ish, 8:30 to 4:35, and they filter those out of the information. Broad picture, unique visitors were up by about 700,000 visitors over the previous report. So 7% increase. Total visits were down, and this is actually a good news thing, which essentially means that the number of visitors that visited downtown Windsor has increased and the number of repeat visitors has decreased. So we have more unique visitors visiting the area than we did in our previous report. Average visits are also down, which would make sense with the previous two numbers. And average visitors per month is up. That also makes sense with the unique visitors. Average visits per month is down, again, because our total visits are down. Next slide, please. So essentially, we have more first-time or infrequent visitors and fewer repeat trips from regular visitors. And I think it's just important to note there that it's fairly safe to assume that we are seeing the same number of repeat visitors, and we've actually increased the unique visitor count. So when we say fewer repeat trips, the people that are in our local catchment area, which I'll talk about near the end of the presentation, we're seeing a holding of that number, and we're seeing an addition to it from people that wouldn't normally have visited over the previous 12 months prior to this report. Yeah, so a part of this report is something called prism segments, and prism segments are how Environics divides up Canadians in general. So there's 58 different segments. We get our top 5 segments. And the prism segments basically describe the demographic of the people that are visiting our bid. And there was a huge shift in this from the previous report. So the previous report, we had a maintainer age of, or average age of about 75 plus, and majority college or trades education. For 24-25, we see that average age drop to 35. And the university and the education moved from trades college to university. Again, all of this is based on your cell phone data. So, and basically that then infers consumer trends, which is what they use. Yeah, so younger people, higher income households as well. We saw the income shift slightly from 99,000 to 114,000. And in general, more educated consumers. Couple of things that this can reflect: an increased appeal of Windsor to commuters, new businesses or events that are appealing to younger consumers and bringing them to the area, and a broader regional visitation. So we're again seeing our circles of geographic circles get slightly larger away from the geofence. So that's what these are. The catchment radius is 35. So they do 35% of the visits and 75% of the visits, and they put them within a radius around the geofence. 23, 24. 35% of our visitors came from within 4 kilometers, and we saw that shift to 6 kilometers in the most recent report. And then for our 70% of visits, they originated within a 24-kilometer radius this year, as opposed to a 22-kilometer radius last year. So in general, visitors are traveling further to reach the area, and it signifies the potential growth in downtown Windsor as a destination oriented area, or increase in destination oriented visits. Yeah, in general, the breakdown of postal codes. So they take the visitors, they also break them down by postal codes. We're seeing still a huge representation from the B0N postal code, Windsor, and a larger representation from other Valley postal codes, which basically indicates we're seeing a little bit more of a regional distribution in terms of the visitors that are coming to downtown Windsor. And we're drawing a wider market. The Prism segments also tell a really interesting story. Essentially, the audience is becoming more diverse. We're less concentrated among core repeat customer groups. So we're seeing more broader customer groups, more people, and this is positive, and basically indicates that we're seeing more people discover or visit downtown Windsor. And like I said before, we have a broader regional draw and a younger and higher income audience. It also suggests that it's transitioning from a highly local routine use district to a broader regional destination, attracting newer and younger visitors, which in general I think is a great news story. Yeah, so I'd be open to any questions anyone has on this, comments. I think in general, it's from a business district perspective, really great to see. We are seeing it's the exact kind of numbers that we do want to see. There's no doubt that the urban core contributes a huge amount to a municipality, and having people visit that is a huge part of that experience. And that I think is the value in events like Garlic Fest, the Parade of Woodland Animals, the winter thing, where anecdotally just walking down the street, I mean, Garlic Fest was huge this year. More closed streets, way more people. Both of the blocks were completely packed, which is an incredibly good news story in general. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And I will open it up to councillors now. If you have any questions for either Karen or Ezra. Mayor Zabian?
Yep. Thank you, Chair, through you to the presenters. Thank you for the information and the presentation and all the work that you guys do to bring the downtown core to life and to promote and to keep the activity and the life going on. It's important, eh? Just with the environics, I think I said it right. What's the township doing with that information? I know we got updated last year, but internally, like, are you guys using it to mold future things, or are individual businesses taking the information, or is it available to the REN to help promote or for information to potential businesses looking to come into the region? Just information.
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. We do this presentation. We'll do a similar presentation at our AGM in a couple of weeks. Any of the generalized information that I presented today is available to anyone that wants it. In terms of our use for it, I think it's not, it's essentially super useful in confirming that we seem to be doing what we should be doing. Trying to increase visitorship, supporting those events that do that. The increase in unique visitors, I think, is very easily directly contributed to those events. all of those events that happen right downtown, and bring an increasingly larger number of visitors to the downtown for them. Garlic Fest would have been captured in the first one as well, that we did. But I mean, again, just anecdotally from being at both of those events, the increase in the size of it was significant.
It's great. It's great to have the data to
Yeah.
back it up. That's
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic.
And I think it's also important to just say that, like, it's the quality and kind of event that we're putting on that I think is the draw. People in general, like, you know, they're coming here to experience something unique. They're coming to a downtown core like Windsor to experience something real and cute and beautiful. They're not, and to experience like local businesses, food, beverage, shopping, whatever it is. And I think these sorts of reports actually really strengthen the argument to keep doing what we're doing and do more of it.
Absolutely. I would probably expect the numbers to go up next year as well with the Harvest Fest and Pumpkin Regatta and boat, like
Totally.
to another
Yeah.
large event, adding more. Just one more question. I don't understand how the data collecting happens, etc. But the younger and wealthier individuals, that's all pulled from cell phone data that's recorded in some database somewhere. So again, it's interesting. We go from one extreme to the other, from 75 plus to 35 and younger, and
Yep.
you know, so it's interesting.
They're looking at your
Yeah,
bank
it's like-
account on your cell phone.
So I can just add a couple of kind of anecdotal evidence to that. So when I was at Saltscapes, at the municipality booth, everyone knew about Bedard's. They were not from Windsor. They just knew about that bakery. And I know from the Santa Claus parade, their story, you know, people came from like Bedford and Halifax to kind of have that experience. And then for me, what I can do with this is, you know, I can dedicate, you know, better promotion to Halifax. So I know that for winter thing, I did use Family Fun Halifax. And when I was talking to people, that is how they heard about it. And that was why they came to Windsor. And then the age is really important because, so Windsor, we always did Friday night music with the same 5 musicians, probably for 20 years. So last year we changed it to a mini concert with a bigger goal of turning that into something bigger in a few years. And so it was at the diversity and equity meeting last night, and it never even occurred to me to do like punk. And there was 3 people around the table who were like, I would go to punk. And I'm like, I would have never thought of hiring punk. It's on the list this year. So it's that kind of data that will help. But finding that balance that we still know that, you know, we have our tried and true crowd, but it's okay to test that out. And eventually we'll have our big concert on the hill in a few years. So.
Perfect. Councillor Ivy, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to add to the mayor's comment, or the piece of the thread that he touched on there about the significant shift that you saw in the 75 plus to 35 under, and the shift in the economics and the education. That's significant in moving that range. It didn't kind of work its way there. It looks like it. So, and I appreciate the reflection that you gave us on what it may be, you know, based on some of the other events taking place and so on. But does the ability exist to dig down deeper into that, to be able to find out why we saw that shift? And even from the standpoint of, I'll ask it, I guess, more straightforwardly, is, did we see a drop in the 75 plus and that demographic, or is it that the other one came up? Might be worth, if the ability exists, to peel back the onion on that. Because that's significant. That's a big move.
Yeah. The ability exists to do absolutely anything you want with the data.
Mm.
It's simply a matter of paying for it.
Right.
And that's their business model.
Sure.
So, I mean, we don't have the budget to pay for that
Detail.
detail.
Yeah.
It would basically be a second report. I did send them an email specifically on that question, which they haven't responded to yet. But I would hypothesize basically that it is not a flip, but it's an addition.
Right.
Solely based on the increase in unique visitors.
Right.
Because we saw that like 8% increase in unique visitors. And an increase, like we saw an increase in unique visitors, we see an increase in our 35% radius and an increase in our 70% radius. So we're in general attracting more people in addition to the people that we attracted in the first report.
Right.
That's a fairly safe assumption to make, I think.
Sure. And then the one other question, and I may have asked it previously, I'm not sure, but based on the fence perimeter that you have for the areas that you cover, and it's got to do with the 20,000 plus vehicles we have going past the Windsor general area on a regular basis, as to whether there's any ability to pick off any data on who it is that's just going by.
Absolutely.
You know,
They're
and I
not
realized another
included,
report.
so none of them are included in this report.
Right.
Because we don't get anywhere near the highway.
Right.
But it would be super simple to put a geofence between exit 5 and 7 on the highway and commission a report specifically for that.
Right.
And I mean, the crazy thing about all of this stuff is like, you can run a report for any time period you want. We run them a year at a time because that's what we can afford to do. But you can run 5 reports going back 5 years, or you can run 10 reports going back 10 years all at once. Because they just have all the data, and it's a matter of putting the report together and sending it to you.
Requesting it. Well, thanks very much for the information. I think it's been said for many years that one of the greatest opportunities exists in the vehicles that go past Windsor on a daily basis, given we're one of the few communities where we're sitting right off the highway. And so the ability to attract and pull in, if you only picked up 5%, well, that's another 1,000 people a day. If the number is still 20,000, it's probably much larger now. But that, for me, becomes the challenge and the opportunity to be able to know who those folks are relative to who is coming in. Is it to get more of them, or is it a new demographics? Thanks again. I really appreciate what you've done with this.
Great. And just before you go, I just want to make sure I understand this one, because I find this one interesting. It said more unique visitors. So we had more visitors, but we had fewer total visits overall. And then it says lower repeat visitation.
Yeah.
Even though we're getting more visitors, we would want to see the repeat visitors, would we not? That they were here, or am I misunderstanding that those visitors? Wouldn't we want to see them come back? Wouldn't we want to see that number increase, that they're here and they're coming back, especially if it's the younger, wealthier?
If our unique visitors stayed the same, yes. But ultimately, we'd love to grow that unique visitor. And the further away we draw that unique visitor from, the less likely they are to repeat. The repeat, so the average visits per visitor is a really simple average of unique visitors and total visits. So it's a little bit blurry, I guess. If you have, like, just speaking from our own business, the August House, I mean, we had, probably 1,200 visitors that came from other countries.
Mhm.
So that repeat visitor, although they may come back again, they will likely not be captured in that data because the average number of visits is just total visits divided by unique visitors.
Mhm.
So it would take way more repeat visits to increase that average if we continually increased our unique visitors.
I was just thinking more or less for the events, like if they're coming for the garlic fest, we want to see them come back for the woodlawn animal. So those are the folk
Yeah.
I think we're trying to, because
And they likely are.
yeah, okay. It's
They're
the
just
other
not
ones that
looking
aren't
at
showing.
average because the total visits and the total visitors is so large, right? It's like
Yeah.
2.8 million visits
Mhm.
By 114,000 or 113,000 visitors. So, yeah.
Perfect. Seeing no more lights. Well, thank you very much for the information, and you're doing things right. So we appreciate that and look forward to when you're back next year with the numbers. Thank you. Okay, council, we'll move right along. We're into 10 reports, and we'll start with a CAO activity update information report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Clerk Snare will help me out there and put that on the screen. So some highlights from the for the month. Of course, some of you participated in most of the events. As far as council meetings go, Councillor Remy, Mayor Zabian, and I attended the NSFM conference in Yarmouth. And although I have not confirmed, they advertised that the presentations would be on the website. I know they have been in the past, so I expect that you can find them there. It's really, it was a nice compact spring conference with lots of good subject matter, including ourselves. So we were presenting on stormwater management and the municipality's response to the drought in 2025. Same time, two different rooms. But anyway, in particular, the drought, it's on everyone's mind, and I think water, and I'll maybe say rural water, if that's fair for me to categorize it that way, is on a lot of municipalities' minds. And the South Shore, for example, they are ahead of us and have had experience of droughts and, more restricted conditions in their rural areas, probably 5 to 10 years worth of experience. And then we're somewhere in the middle, so to speak, with just how we managed it from a bottled water, watering stations, well information, and so forth. So a lot of discussions provincially now about drought conditions and rural water. And we've had a follow-up meeting with provincial reps, and we are actually speaking at the AMA meeting as well for the Association of Municipal Administrators. So there's just lots of discussion and multiple provincial departments, and they're all looking to share and inform each other on how to better support the community at large. A few things, little projects. So we're happy to announce, as we have in the past, that the graduation ceremony is proceeding and will happen at the sports complex. It's June 29th, if I have that date correct, which is a Monday. And the logistics are being ironed out, and we hope that this is a traditional thing. I think this year they're closer to 260, I think was the number I heard, but 250 plus graduates, families, friends will visit the sports complex for that memorable event. So something we look forward to. On one of the items brought forward by council, the pension and the consideration of changing the pension. So a little bit of administrative update. So the union basically has language within their collective agreement that kind of states it's a 50-50, and in this case 9-9. So in order to change the union or to give the union the flexibility, it does require the union to vote on that. So they will do their thing and report back. I think generally flexibility has been warmly received, but it will require a vote from the union. Non-unionized folks, along with union reps, we have an up and coming pension committee is it tomorrow, I think, Carly, thank you. Tomorrow, and we did a little staff survey, so we'll get the feedback from all staff at that meeting tomorrow and just kind of see, and generally in that environment for non-union folks, majority rules in that case. So we'll report back to council as that information comes in, but I think generally, not to indicate one thing or other, but flexibility has been a positive consideration. Just what does it look like and are they comfortable with change? The budgets have been posted on the website for the public, just as an FYI, going down the Valley Regional Enterprise Network. So we have an LOC meeting scheduled for May 28th. The CAOs have had the benefit of chatting with members of the board and senior staff from the VREN just in how they are pivoting and continue to try to seek out the same level of funding from the province through their various application processes. And they're also looking at more of a private investment model. So where they maybe have the opportunity of private industry contribute directly towards the REN. But again, all this is in response to the provincial funding change and then the termination notices served by all municipalities. So we're still in it, of course, with the 2-year, and they're working through options. LOC will get more of an update, and then I expect LOC, I think it's Councillor Remy, will report back as to what the position or what the ask is of LOC after that group meets. Staff Sergeant and I have a meeting scheduled May 21st next week so that we can discuss this strategic review process for the Police Advisory Board. And really, it's just he and I will revisit some of the lessons we were led through at the Old Orchard Inn a month or so ago, where strategic planning for police advisory boards was something that we received some training on. Then we'll meet with the PAB at a future date and go through that exercise. An update on the fire services director. So KBRS Consulting is actively advertising nationally for the recruitment of that position. We are expecting a short list on June the 3rd, from which then we'll select our candidates for interview, and then we will do the interview process immediately after that and look to secure a candidate. So those are some of the highlights over the last month. And if there's any other questions, happy to take those.
Thank you, CAO. Are there any questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to CEO. The radar speed signs in the school zones. Just wondering where we're at with that one.
Yes, I did ask Manager Burgess about that some time ago. We were using our signs that we had in our inventory. And perhaps if you would allow me, before the meeting is over, I know I can find an email from him, but I do believe I don't know if Deanna, you recall, I thought we had permission from the province to put those out there in the Brooklyn area. But why they haven't been installed, I'll have to look at my emails if you allow me to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but I thought we were there. Pretty sure we were there.
Okay, seeing no more lights, thank you for the report. And we'll move right along to 10. We'll group them 10B, C, D, and E. We have the 2026-27 reserve budget information report, and we'll do the general operating ending February 2026, 25-26 fiscal year, water utility operating ending February 26, 25-26 fiscal year, and water consumption ending February 2026, 25-26 fiscal year. So Director Rashawn, you're going to be up for a little bit.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to bring up my screen here. right, thank you, Your Worship. So through you, I have circulated the 2026-27 reserve budget. This budget summarizes the amounts that were approved within the capital budget as well as the operating budget. And should reflect closely to what you've seen on April the 8th with that version. The municipality has 3 types of reserves that we're going to be covering today, operating, capital, and special. These are set up under the reserve policy and the Municipal Government Act. And the reserves for the water utility, though we're not going to cover because we've already reviewed them as part of our previous discussions with budget deliberations, they are prepared in accordance with the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board. The reserves help cover both daily operations as well as larger projects, and they reduce the overall need for borrowing and help keep the budget steady from year to year as things pop up. The reserve budget is based on estimates and reflects what has been approved in the 26-27 capital and operating budget and projected amounts as of March 31st, 2026. Or as well, March 2027, and may change based on the results of the 2025-26 fiscal year finalization, or if council provides further direction during the 26-27 year. Note not all reserves are considered a spendable reserve, and only accessible reserves are included in the budget. Operating reserves must be at least 10% of the yearly operating revenue, and they are also funded through any surplus funds that are occurred each year after the fiscal year closes. The fire asset reserve is used to buy and replace firefighting equipment and or vehicles. This falls under the operating reserve category. And each year, 2% of the total value of fire assets is recommended to be added. It is also receives money from any fire equipment sales or insurance proceeds from a fire equipment. So under the operating reserve, we have various operating reserves. These would, again, all be considered operating reserves that would be spendable. These operating reserves are projected at the end of 26-27 to be at 2.2 million. We have a projected spend, which again has been approved through the operating budget as well as the capital budget of 2.9 million. And a addition of 1.7. We are projecting that this amount will be contributing from a surplus contribution, which at the time that this was prepared, we were estimating about 400,000. It's slightly higher now, as well as the minimum threshold, the RCMP surplus. Then there's also the contributions through the operating reserve, which includes the amount for the fire services reserve at the 125, the boundary reserve at 12,250, and the election reserve at 50,000. So those were all within the transfers to and from reserves as part of the operating budget. The minimum threshold for the operating reserve for 26-27 is 10% of the operating budget revenues, or 3.9 million of the operating. The projected reserve balance of 2.2 million puts us at about 1.7 million under the reserve policy threshold. We're projected to have that $2.9 million spend and the various funding. So some of the commitments that have already been made through these funds are debt servicing that we have carried forward, the home flood protection programs that have been carried forward, any PACE programming, which has been fully utilized now as of this year. So any of that would be considered in there as well. There's also the withdraw that we have within the operating budget of $1,050,000 from the RCMP reserve to support the cost of the area rates. The fire reserve, as I mentioned, we're aiming to have a balance of at least 2% of the fire assets to be contributed. Based on this, we have increased the contribution this year by 25,000, but we're still not meeting the targeted contribution amount of the policy. So our policy basically which should have us around 211,000. So we're meeting about 48.2% of our policy requirement there. Sorry, I just gotta move this window out of the way. I think, there we go. So capital reserves have various different items within there that are funded in various different ways and can also be utilized in different ways. These are highlighted within our reserve policy. So council can decide how much each year it wants to add to these based on the policy targets, and what the municipality can afford. So basically, council has the flexibility to make the ultimate decision on what the municipality can afford. But the policy is kind of there to kind of help guide us. So we have our building reserves, which are funded fund repairs and new municipal buildings. So we have a target of 2% of our building asset values per year that we contribute to that. We have our road infrastructure reserve, which pays for future road work. This target is about 8% of our road asset value per year. We have our vehicle reserve, which covers vehicle replacements and upgrades, which is a target of 4% of the vehicle asset value per year. And then our equipment reserve, which covers non-vehicle related equipment, which targets about 4% of the equipment assets values per year. General capital reserves are used for just general capital projects that come up, and they're funded by land sales and surpluses from asset sales. And that is one of the requirements under FRAM, is that when we sell a capital asset, it gets posted to a capital reserve. So going into the detail of that capital reserve component. So capital reserves are partially or fully funded of capital expenditures outlined in the capital budget. So, and we've highlighted, of course, what ones are various designations, depending on if they're West Hants, Town of Windsor, WHRM, or Hansport. The capital reserve balance at the end of 26-27 is projected to be at 1.6 million. We have a projected spend of 1.2 million, and we have a projected contribution of 962. So of that 962, we have, of course, some various changes within the infrastructure here, but this would include the 850 that we have contributing. The capital building, road, and vehicle reserves are funded through contributions of the operating budget, which we talked about. And that is the amount that council can decide each year, depending on affordability. As a percentage of the capital asset, the reserve policy gives council the ability to make different values of contributions each year. This year, the reserve contribution was held at 850,000. This would be divided, of course, between the various capital reserves as outlined within that capital section of the policy, based on a weighted percentage. The sewer utility funds, so though those are under capital, they're kind of a separate reserve. They're funded through the sewer utility, similar to the water utility. So their contribution equals the amount of their 26-27 depreciation of the sewer assets, less any deficit that they incur. So as we mentioned, this year we're not projecting to contribute anything, and last year we weren't able to contribute anything. Based on the capital that we are only making an estimated 47.2% of our capital contributions to reserve as per the policy. Our actual contribution should be closer to 1.8 million based on the capital asset balances at this time. And then we have our special reserves. So our special reserves are set aside for specific future costs or legal obligations. So these are reserves that have an intended purpose, and they're not also intended to last forever. So they do have a finite life. So even when we think of CCBF, they have a finite life in the sense of if there's no renewal of an agreement, In the future, the funds may eventually not be there. Similar to the Housing Accelerator Fund, similar to the asset retirement obligation. These are things that we have legal obligations to also separate and attribute interest to separately. So special reserves are restricted through funding agreements, legislation, or the area rates as set by council. The special reserve balance at the end of 26-27 is expected to have about 3.4 million, the projected spend of 6.3 million, and a projected additions of 3.3 million. Which 969,435 is funded through the operating budget through the area rates. There's also the ARO reserve that's there, which again, we have a 5-year contribution to get to the amount that the ARO is required to maintain. And that is reevaluated each year. This would include amounts for the Windsor Community Center, the courthouse, the 100 King Street building, the Hansport Library, and an old well in Hansport. So those are what we have, of course, and the landfill. And again, all of the proposed spends and additions were outlined within the operating and capital budgets. So this is just, again, summarizing the projected year-end balance, as well as the proposed balance. And of course, those may change as we proceed through finalizing our year-end. So I thought I would reiterate and reshare the CCBF, or the Canada Community Building Fund Reserve, in the capital budget. So this would have been part of the capital budget that was reviewed and approved. So this is the 5-year kind of estimate, as well as this year's total. So this also assumes no third-party grants within this projection of 5-year total. So that's something that council will have to monitor. But as of right now, we're sitting at about, if with all of the proposed spend and additions, at 1.5 based on that. And then we get into a comparison of our year. So again, these were already represented within our 26-27 operating budget, but I just thought I would show you where we kind of landed on our contributions to and from reserves. So within our operating reserve, we increased by 25,000. That was the increase to the fire reserve that we did. We maintained our capital reserve amount of 850,000. And within the special reserves, we actually reduced the special reserve contribution by 110,000, but considering that we lowered the Hansport and the Windsor area rates, that is contributing to why we're seeing a little less going into the reserves. So when we break it out over categories, we see that our operating reserves represent about 27% of our reserve balance. Our capital reserves represent 20%, but our special reserves represent about 42%. Overall, since 25-26 year-end projection, our projection has updated and has changed by 2.7 million. So from the 2026 projected year-end, from the 2025-26 budget to the 2026-27 budget, for year-end, that's 2,700,000. So the total municipal reserve, so these would be non-water related. The municipal reserve balance at the year end 2026-27 is projected to be 7.4 million. The projected spend of 10.4 million and a projected addition of 6 million. So this is just a summary of what we just reviewed within the different categories. This is a net variance, or a net spend, of 4.4 million. So as we still are in the process of finalizing our 25-26, these numbers may of course change, because of course we are projecting balances here, which then feed the proposed balances in 2026. And these could fluctuate for various reasons, but including repayment of internal loans between the funds, year-end entries, project approval variances, and deferral of projects or grants. So then we have our 5-year water capital reserve balance. So again, we have already shared this as part of our water utility budget deliberations presentation, but this again is just a 5-year kind of estimate of where the capital and depreciation reserves will be for the water utility. And we had estimated a 1% yearly increase in depreciation from year to year. All right, just gonna move that. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the overall reserve budget that has been presented here to council.
Thank you, Director Rashawn. Seeing Councillor Remy's light on.
Through you, Chair. I just have one quick question. And I'm sure that it's probably easily answered, but on the first slide that you have operating reserves must be at least 10%. Must be according to what?
The policy,
Like our own municipal.
our own policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it says that it must be, and we aren't near 10% though. Is that
No.
what I understood?
Exactly.
We're at 4% or something like that.
I can calculate that percentage from you,
Okay.
but we're a little bit 1.7 million under where we would be projecting to be. But again, council can make that exception if they're okay with where the balance is.
Okay. I was just questioning just wondering about the wording because it says must in this one, but these are targets in other ones. So, but this one is saying must. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Director Rashawn? Seeing no, Councillor John Smith.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. I have a question around capital reserves. So for the operating reserves at the very bottom line under the last column, it says the reserve policy is 10% of revenue or 3.9 million, but there's not a similar comment around the capital reserves. So what should they be?
And that is something that council can determine. It is not a threshold that they have set through policy. So we have a recommended contribution, but we don't have an end goal target to be, to have set or set aside. Whereas with an operating reserve, it's meant to be more for funding those day-to-day or unknowns that pop up throughout the year. So there's a threshold to say, we'd like to maintain this for the unknowns. However, council can decide how much they actually want to maintain within the operating reserve.
But it says up above that, it says the reserve policy, and it gives the percentages for each one, like the building reserve is 2%. So that's 2% of the building assets that the municipality owns.
Exactly.
So that would be significant number
That's the contribution amount
every year.
that is proposed, yeah.
And are we putting that in?
No, right now we are at, and I'll just skip forward to my slide. We are at about 47.2% below where we would be contributing. So right now we're contributing about 850,000, whereas based on the asset values, the contribution would be closer to 1.8 million.
And that's just for the building reserve?
No, that's for all three of them.
Okay. All right. So how do we get to the point where we're contributing what's recommended?
Well, we can definitely create a strategy, but it does have impacts on the tax rate because it's a contribution from the actual tax rate. So it's something that council has the ability to decide on every year as part of the recommendations going forward. So I know from 2024-25, we had 800,000. So there was a recommendation to increase it by 50,000 for 25-26. So if council wants to continue to grow that, they can. It's just how fast and how quick does council want to grow the contribution to if they want to make those contributions.
Okay, that's everything for now. I'm going to take a closer look at this.
Okay, Councillor Ivy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'm conscious that I've got a report similar, but not the same and not the same detail as the director. And so but you had made a comment at the early part of your presentation, Director Richard, through you, Deputy Mayor, to the director, that the operating reserve included, and you had an exclusion in there, except for there was, and one of the notes that I made in my report is that we've got many accounts within the the operating reserve, the capital or the special, but which accounts do we not include when we're looking at it from a budgetary standpoint?
So that's a good question. Basically, they would be how they would be identified. So within the reserves, there's a couple different things. One of them, of course, is it spendable or is it kind of more of a deferred revenue related item? So for example, we have a tax sale reserve, but we can't touch those funds for 20 years. So there's no point in, again, including them because they're not touchable. They mature at a certain date, and then at maturity, they get transferred into the operating reserve. So these are the kind of items that have to be assessed. The other thing that also is not on here is if we have any obligations that we've already committed to. So, for example, as part of the reserve preparation process, I have to look at historical things that a council has approved and then remove these things, as well as what we have internally that is owed between different funds. For example, we have 13 funds and they can owe each other at various times. So for example, with the Town of Windsor operating reserve, that amount has already been spoken for. So it's not spendable at this point. It's not a spending reserve. It's just a transfer internally when the amount is due between the funds.
Okay, so that's helped that coming because that actually goes to one of the purposes of the question is that the Town of Windsor operating reserve was last seen over a year ago. It had about $925,000 within the account, and that was I don't know that we saw that here as much as we would have seen it in the audited statements. I may be straddling between the statements, so that's what I'm trying to understand because our audited statements show significantly greater volumes within the reserves than what we see during the budget period.
Yep.
And so to the question asked by Councillor Remy, I believe, with regards to the 10% on the operating reserve side of things, based on audited statements, and we don't have 26, I realize, but based on actuals for 25 that we resolved a month and a half ago, and spending that could have taken place within 26, I would argue, or it would appear, would be better phrasing, it would appear that we have more than 10% funding in our operating reserve. However, to your wording that I didn't pick up on, but it's whether it's spendable or not.
It's, yeah, because we may have commitments that aren't necessarily within the statements at that time when we finalize the year. So there's commitments that, of course, council has made. For instance, if a grant for a CCBF grant comes in a little later, that again would have to be considered. The other thing is CCBF prior to 2024, I think is when the agreement got updated. We couldn't recognize the expenses of the grants that were given out, and we'd have to actually amortize those over 10 years because we'd have to hold them for 10 years. So there's a lot of background financial stuff that has to go into actually calculating those reserve balances and what's actually spendable within those reserve balances because of commitments. So for example, the home flood protection program, we have a carryover reserve, a portion for that, but all of that's been committed through grants, but they haven't all been expensed yet or haven't all been dispersed yet. We're still working on them. So that can't be spent. It has to be held.
Okay, so thank you for that. So with the Town of Windsor operating reserve, because it was a surprise to me that it wasn't included, what is it that's spoken for at $900,000? That's a lot of the operating reserve to have
Capital over the last few years. It's mostly capital stuff.
from the operating reserve. We don't have that in the capital reserve. We haven't transferred it for any.
No, it's when we approve the capital budget, it's coming from the specific reserve that it's in. So we can use our operating budget to fund capital projects, like our operating reserve. We usually fund, like we've funded designs from that. We've funded organizational reviews from that, view plane studies. Like there's been a lot of stuff that is more capital related that gets funded through those operating reserves.
Okay, just I'm not aware of
Yeah.
the transaction on that, at least as we've allocated over previous years that we have funding that would, as part of the policy, were to see that in specific detail as to what is being allocated. So that may be.
And the other thing too to consider, and again, it's getting a little bit more into the financial piece, is the internal loan piece as well. So again, it's transferring to and from. So if you look through the balance sheet statements within the financial statements, you'll see that there is like due to water or due to capital or due to operating. Those are those internal loans that are between the different funds that we have.
Absolutely. That was another question, but perhaps for later, but is that we don't see that. We don't hear about that when we're going through budgets. So when we loan money, so to speak, when we're moving money from one fund to another because one can't afford it, we never talk about that, about the interest that's attached or what the term is and so forth. And I take it that's normal, natural process that we wouldn't be involved in that part of that conversation, or?
Yeah, no, that's more an accounting journal entry level reconciliation on a monthly basis that we do with a journal entry. It would be definitely more of an operational thing. That's why when it comes to council's table, it's more of a what is actually spendable and not committed already through either internal loans, external commitments, or various other items.
Okay. I think I'm good on that for now. Thank you. That was a lot. We didn't have all those slides either, correct? Like we only had the
I had printed
to the state.
Yeah, you only had that, but I had printed a copy for all of council to have a copy of it today, and I'll make sure that the municipal clerk has a copy of it to upload into the package. So when, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get a copy. My chair got moved. It's
Okay.
okay.
No, that's okay.
In any event, yeah, so I wasn't able to follow all that. I'll cease at that now. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other, Counselor John Smith.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. So just a comment, and it might be in the package that you gave us. It would be helpful to know what the total value of the assets were. So like, say the building reserve, it's at 2%. If we knew what the total value of the buildings were, so that we would know what the reserve should be.
Okay.
Because right now I can't really tell what we should be saving. So it'd be helpful if we knew.
Yeah, and typically when we present the operating budget, that is a discussion, of course, at that point too, because that impacts the tax rate. So it's usually where we focus on how much we can actually afford to increase the taxes before we make that contribution.
But if we knew what it should have been, at least we have a target to work towards. Yeah.
Oh, Counselor Ivy.
Yeah, so I'm really trying not to jump ahead, and I'll have to think on my feet here about what I'll do with the report that I have. But to Counselor Smith's, if I could add to his comment and or question, that the way I read the policy that we have on this, it's I don't see anything in there that gives us the provision not to contribute to the reserves as is identified by policy, whether it's 2%, 4%. The word that's used there is that council will contribute to the specific reserves. Nothing about the fact, which means, I believe, my interpretation of it would be, is that we must be making those allocations on an annual basis. The other thing that's interesting with that, and I'll save this for later again, if I still choose to speak to that report, is that there is no cap on it. In other words, the way it's written in our policy for the reserves or the accounts, is that how you refer to them? The accounts that are specified within the reserve funds, there's no cap. It's that we must, and it's specified by percentage. And when you look at that on most of those, we're not close. I think there's a couple there that we're okay, but there's several there that we're losing sight of that. And that's part of the reason for what I'm referencing later on, that we need to get inside this more reserves. When we deal with them during the budget process, it's sort of a how we're going to get from where we're at to where we want to get to, and then they get managed, but we're not necessarily looking at it through the eyes of all the detail and what it means. or going in from one account and moving it to another? And can you move it from A to B? Is it permitted? And what does that do to the balance that we should have there? I'll leave it at that. But you can correct me on anything that I've said there, Director Rashawn. Am I wrong in that, or am I on the mandatory, on the?
Yeah, I would say that based on council can decide to follow its policy or not. We've experienced that with some of our other policies as well. So this is just a best practice that council has approved. Again, council can choose not to follow it, and that's what has been in the past, has been occurred.
Okay, so I guess forewarned as to what's in front of us, and that's part of the reason for the report that's coming later. But thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, seeing no other lights, we're going to move along to our general operating ending February 2026.
Just 1 second while I get everything back to normal on my screen. All right. So in general operating, there's really not a lot of change that's happened within the projections from what you've seen in the previous month in January. So the actual change in the overall projected surplus is only $7,002. We had projected revenues at 3.6 in January. We're now projecting them at 3.3. We also projected expenses to be closer to 1.7. We're now projecting them to be closer to 1.4. So overall, those two decreases has amounted to a change of about $7,002. Overall, where we are closer to year end, the projections have been getting tighter and tighter with where we're at. So you'll notice that we have no comment on transportation, and that's just due to March being a lighter snow month than what we anticipated. So the costs were actually a little lower. So that's why you don't see a comment associated to the actual transportation anymore. Happy to answer any other questions if there's any other questions associated to the report that has been submitted.
Thank you, Director Rashawn. Are there any questions on the operating budget as of February? Seeing no lights, I think we can move on to water utility operating.
Excellent. So just give me 1 second here to get that open. Okay. So within this budget, we actually seen quite a significant change in comparison to our January report. And this is due to one of the accounts that we had flagged for review coming in a little higher than what it was. I was hoping that we could capitalize more that was in that account. But unfortunately, most of it is associated to repair works to leaks as well as water main breaks. So there's a very large number of water main breaks and dealing with very large repairs from what the director has communicated to me. So that's why we're projecting a little higher on the transmission and distribution. But overall, we have seen a slight increase in the overall expenses. Again, that's just associated to that review of that transmission and distribution maintenance account. And that is resulting in 137,000 more in expenses. And we have reduced our revenue projections by 49,802 based on where we are seeing some of those early projections from our March billing coming in. The other thing I'll note is we are very close to where we were our last February. We have last February in 2025, we were projecting we would be at about 29.6. We were projecting to be at 30.7 and we're at 29.6 in expenses. So we're very close to where we were projecting our expenses to be as of last February. So that's a really good sign as well. The other thing you'll note is there is an increase in the non-operating expenditure, and that's associated due to more water meters being needed than anticipated. So that has increased the overall capital out of revenue from the users by 35,000. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions on our financial update for water? Seeing no lights, we'll move on to water consumption.
All right. And I will say this one also did not see any changes at all since the January report when it comes to the variance from the bulk water consumption. In February, we had 8 closed accounts and no adjustments, moving us up to 257 accounts closed between April and February. So what you're seeing in the changes from the January report to this report is just final bills that were produced in Q4 for those 8 closed accounts. I will also note that we will be transitioning this report over to a more public works orientated report, and they're working on finalizing that, and hopefully we'll have the new report available for March. So it may not necessarily look like this going forward, but it will have more detailed information from public works. So this may be the last time you see it looking like this.
Perfect. Any question, counselors, on the consumption? Seeing no lights. Thank you, Director Rashawn. I think you're finally off the hook.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Okay, council, we'll move on. 11 correspondence F 2024 to 2028 council term general correspondence received as of May 8th, 2026. 2027, 2028, 12-month notice letter to NSFM and West Hants Regional Municipality was copied. B 2024-28 council term correspondence sent as May 8, 2026. There was none. So
If I could just quickly on the 12-month notice. So that's a traditional notice that the province is required to give us should they anticipate increased cost or change in service level. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. If not, it's 5 pages. I know when I opened it, it's 5 pages. It's like, what is in this? Generally, I think we're not forecasting significant financial impact on the municipality as you kind of go down through those categories of fire service, RCMP, and I've reported in the past where I think we're either equal to or better than or well into a process of dealing with some of the deficiencies or changes, especially in those 2 areas. And they did not provide us a service under the IT category and so on. So however, if things are to change, we will report to you as we're going to look at that departmentally to just see that we feel right now it's not a significant impact on our municipality as it might be for others. So just a quick comment on that. Thank you.
perfect. Thank you. So we'll move along to 12, new business. So A, meeting and committee procedural policy amendments, recommendation report, Clerk Snare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you this evening, Council, is a recommendation report regarding proposed amendments to the meeting and committee procedural policy. Within the report, you'll note that the highlighted changes have been identified, and this is in conversations with the Accessibility Committee as well as the DEI Committee, the Diverse, Equitable, and Inclusive Communities Committee. It's just looking mostly at our reports and through the lens of staff, how we write our reports, taking a DEI and accessibility lens to our recommendation reports that come before council in the future. So within the policy, it does note the changes and happy to answer any questions council may have.
Perfect. Are there any questions on the proposed changes that were in the report? Seeing no lights, there is a recommendation. Mayor Zabian,
Council direct CAO to engage staff to make necessary changes to the meeting committee procedural policy, RCOGE-003.00, following discussion of council on the May 12th, 2026 committee of the whole meeting.
is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Paul Wheaton. Councillor Remy, did you? Oh, sorry, who was it?
Paul Moore.
Paul Morton, sorry. Close.
It's okay. Both look the same.
Yeah. We'll move right along after that. Councillor Remy.
Through you, Chair. I mean, I'm really excited, especially about the accessibility and inclusion stuff being included on the reports. I did just have one question though, and if this isn't the appropriate time, then please let me know. But I was just curious, like, I'm assuming staff have looked at ways to implement that. So, because it's obviously going to impact staff, is this the wrong time to ask those questions? I mean, I understand, obviously, I was part of those discussions kind of thing and implementing it, and just want to make sure that there is value in doing it. It's not just ticking off a box or adding excessive amounts of work. I mean, I think I'm in favor of it, but
So
sorry.
through your chair to Councillor Remy, I believe during the presentation from Chair Bourgeois, CAO identified that he felt it was a doable thing for staff. Our plan is to roll it with the kind of framework that Chair Bourgeois presented and share that with staff to keep that kind of in the back of their mind when they're writing their reports. And also just in the front of their mind, we've also got the DEI wheel there to kind of just, make sure that we're touching all those bases. But we don't see it being an oversome burden, quite honestly. CAO might want to chime in a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I would just echo the comments, but I think it's also, it's kind of a step towards the equity piece, because it's like anything, if it's not where it needs to be, then we need to make an effort to get it there. And at some point in time, we won't need we won't need to reference it. I'm not saying that staff do not do that now, but this is an effort to make sure that we're all accountable, including you as decision makers. Right? I think you should be expected to do the same thing when you're asked to make a decision around something like this, where you're referring to this, and then at some point it becomes second nature and becomes incorporated into your thought process. But so no, I think we can. Now, we have not reviewed it with all staff with respect to the impacts, but again, back to this effort, I think it's required, and it's a good model, it's adaptable and somewhat user-friendly. So off we go.
Thank you. And again, I apologize because I know I
No,
missed
no.
that meeting. So I just
Yeah.
was, okay. Thank you so much.
All good. Okay, so there is a motion. I'll just read it since we've had some discussion since it was made. Council direct the CAO to engage staff to make the necessary changes to the meeting and committee procedural policy RCOGE-003-.00 following the discussion of council at the May 12th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting. We're all good, so we'll put that to a vote. Clerk Snare, please. Yes. The two Pauls.
They're like that.
I tortured it, so they just, yes, no problem. I'll let you vote now. Not a problem. I'll cut you off. Motion carried. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we'll move right along to the next one. Reserves, budget, actual and policy report. Counselor Ivy.
Okay, so now you know where my mind was. So this report, not knowing of the other report coming in, certainly some helpful information included in the director's report. I still struggle with the variance between what we deal with as a starting number and the starting number on the left-hand side of the chart that we're dealing with on reserves, which I haven't included here. I was looking to deal with it more high level, but that first number is the 2025 year-end number. And typically that far left column with the projected end of year 2025 numbers, one that we would have before we go into budget discussions. This year was unique. We had an audit that came just at the front of the budget process. But the difference between what we have in audited reserve numbers at 27 million compared to 15, which is what we see in the report or the projections that we deal with. And that's dealing with just those three, again, excluding water, because it adds another level of complexity to this. So understanding the comment as well regarding spendable reserves, which I'm struggling a bit with that because I'm pretty sure that in our budget discussions that we allocated funding from the town of Windsor's operating reserve into another reserve to get it maneuvered to be able to fund an initiative within council. And so I'm feeling a little bit uncertain with what I've got here. I still believe that we do need to have those reserves approved by council. It's required that we have a capital reserve. And so I believe that that would or should have to be accounted for. And if you've got capital, well, then operating and special feeding capital the way that they do, I think those still need to be put forward and approved. I also believe, based on our conversation here tonight, that we do need to review the reserve policy. Ours only lists, I'm going to say half a dozen, it's probably a bit more, but with specificity in there. I've seen other municipalities where they list every reserve and account that they have, what their purpose is, what they can be used for, what they can't be used for, in essence, and the targets that they have for each of those. And as commented on in the earlier report, the wording in our reserve policy is that council will contribute the amounts. And in going through some of those, like whether it's the building reserve or the fire equipment or the asset reserve and so on, you have to go into our audited statements so you can get a sense of those, but I'm not in and out of those numbers in that detail enough to even come close to being able to do that. So I don't know if anybody has questions on the report that I have here, what I'm going to suggest or what I'd like to do, having spoken to it to this extent based on what we see from Director Sean, is I'd like to not necessarily make those motions tonight. I'd like to revisit my report and bring it back in 2 weeks' time to tidy up and or tighten anything that, so I don't have us with information that sends us further afield than we need to be. I'm not sure what the proper procedure is for that. But I would suggest that I simply defer the report and with a view to amending it to tighten it up, to bring it back to council in 2 weeks' time, if that's acceptable to council.
Yeah, I think you can defer. I'm seeing a shake of the head from Clerk Snare, so you can defer it till.
Or an amend is okay, that it'll be, okay.
Okay.
But that's okay with everybody around the table. Do we need a motion for that, or is that? Yeah, so motion to defer my report out 2 weeks to the council meeting, the 26th of May.
Mhm. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Paul Morton. Is there a question on them? Did Councillor Remy? Did you have you're good?
No, mine was more comments on it, but if
Okay.
it's being deferred, I can save those comments for when we actually discuss it.
Sounds good. Okay, we'll just do a show of hands, make it easier. Motion pass. Perfect.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so we are on to 12C, secondary suites. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, over the last couple of years, I've had some residents reach out, wondering if we could offer a secondary suite incentive policy to construct secondary suites in the basement, on top of a garage or in an outbuilding. HRM has such policy. Yeah, I'm just going to open it up to council for discussion if they're interested in such a policy. Thanks.
Okay, so CAO.
If I could just stay on the information side, I had the opportunity, although late, I think Clerk Snare has it up there, just to give a little bit more information around maybe what the province is doing and what we're doing to help with your discussion or add to your discussion. So I think we're aware now through the media and provincial communications that they had previously a $40,000 program essentially to support homeowners in the development of secondary suites, but that was connected to an affordable housing requirement or criteria. So that has concluded. So, you know, there might be a bit more pressure from the community as one thing goes away to look to have it replaced with something else. Maybe low on the financial side, but just to remind council of our secondary suite policy, that's evolved. Since consolidation, we had the ability to do secondary suites, and now secondary suites can be separate from the unit if so desired, as Councillor McLean says, in a garage on its own. And then, of course, restrictions on square footage and so forth. But the evolution of secondary suites has progressed since consolidation. We have waived the fees associated with development permits and building permits, which is approximately $4,000 a year. It's not a lot, but it does help as a small incentive under that Housing Accelerator program. And then some of our infilling promotion, which some of you, I know I've heard from you. What's this letter that the residents have received? I think it was in the newsletter. We're part of the Housing Accelerator Fund. We had reached out to folks that had vacant lots for infilling purposes to say, hey, you know, you have an infill lot, you might think of developing it. And we are actually have created some building designs that you might consider to help you in your decision-making process around doing something with your lot, including smaller mini versions of homes that may also support the in-law or secondary suite piece. So that's just some of the other work. That's not a direct financial incentive other than the permits, but that's some of the work that we're doing as well to just kind of help you with your discussion.
Perfect. Councillor Remy.
Through you, Chair. I just have, it might not be I am completely in support of investigating this a little bit, and in fact went down a little bit of a rabbit hole myself after reading the report. So there are stuff like CBRM offers some stuff. Edmonton's doing some really cool things there for secondary suites and supporting seniors and accessibility things and those types of things. So there's some different things. So it might not necessarily be down those funding streams that we were chatting about, but certainly some opportunities as far as some of the things that we're doing, like waiving fees or removing barriers and those types of things. So yeah, I think it would be super cool if we investigated that a little bit and made some options.
Okay. Anyone else? Mayor Zabian?
I think CO said it pretty good. We've done a lot of work on this over the last number of years, and we are waiving those permit fees. We are providing those infill plans through the Housing Accelerator. We've done a lot of great work on that. I don't think we need to do another policy because it's going to create in my opinion, it'll create an interpretation or somebody thinking that there's a $40,000 allowance as well coming with it, and that's where I would be worried. Policy may appear to create. Again, council hasn't budgeted for any monetary amounts that I think people would be looking for because it no longer exists on maybe a federal or provincial level, and I just don't think a municipality can afford that type of program, in my opinion.
Okay. I'm going to go to Councillor Ivy and then I'll come back to this.
Yeah, just through you, Deputy Mayor, to the CAO, I believe on this. I'm pretty sure that the waiving of the fees is at least at present without deadline. Like that's ongoing with us. Is that not correct?
So by definition, it would be under the Housing Accelerator Fund. So I think that expires March 2027 currently, maybe. So council could elect to continue to do that, but we would have get you to do that through the fee schedule or whatever. But for the most part, that is associated with the Housing Accelerator program and the funds there. But again, you could continue it.
Good. Another question?
I guess the only reason that I'm pausing is I thought that we had, and maybe I'm wrong on my timing here, I could have lost track of it, but I thought we had brought that in before the Housing Accelerator Fund. No, that was coincident, same time. Okay, thank
We
you.
were doing some things around COVID, waiving fees, but I don't think we were doing that. No, Carlos.
Councillor Remy.
Through you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify some of the things that I was talking about wasn't necessarily related to like $40,000 grants and those types of things, which is what I was referring to when I said some of the cool things they're doing in Edmonton and CBRM aren't. So it may be a different idea than Councillor McLean. So perhaps this is a conversation he and I can have later. Now that I'm saying it out loud, but I think that there are things that the municipality can do and put into a policy that may not be necessarily something that we would have to budget, but maybe ways that we could fast track applications or those designs that the CAO was speaking about to make sure people knew that those were available and to kind of pretty up the package so that everything is there so people understand that we are there to support them in these ways when they're looking to move their grandparents in or, you know, whatever, those types of things. So that's what I was referring to. So not necessarily the grant. So I apologize if I sidetracked the intent of what that discussion was, but just wanted to reiterate.
Okay, Councillor Paul Morton.
I just got a comment. I can't help myself. So I went through a daunting process on the budget this year. We found out we didn't have much coin left, no folding money. And just a reminder, the municipality is not a bank, so we just can't go grab it.
Any other questions? Okay, there's no recommendation, so we will move on. Move on, okay. Perfect. Public comment period. Well, we have no public here, so we're gonna have no comments. So it is 8:01. We normally break, but we're gonna go into camera. So what I'm gonna do is I'll look for a motion to go in camera, and so moved, second. All those in favor? And before we do, just for the folks at home, we are going to go in camera. If there's any motions coming out of the in camera, we will be back. If not, our next meeting will be May 26, 2026 at council at 6 p.m. So if we're not back, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.